I will just check to see that it is working. And this has recently become quite an unreliable way of doing it. It's working. Good. There you go. Over to you then, Kate.
Okay, I'll just share my screen. So is that working?
It is, yes.
Perfect. So I am the Waste Strategy Officer for West Suffolk Council and a fan of alliteration. So welcome to the wonderful and weird world of waste in West Suffolk, if I can get my words out. So as you may have heard in my taster session, we've got a bit of an odd setup. It's a legacy thing where we've got a two-tier authority. Suffolk County Council are responsible for the disposal. West Suffolk Council are responsible for the collection of waste. We luckily have an excellent working relationship between all of the districts and the county council, where we work through the Suffolk Waste Partnership, and we work together to really drive a lot of good waste behaviours, and that is driven sort of by some of the regulatory instruments such as recycling credits and landfill tax, and obviously through the highly regulated aspects of waste disposal, and obviously it is highly regulated because of the risk to environment and human health. It's also worth noting that the waste industry is also a very dangerous industry to work in. I think it has the second highest, one of the highest fatality rates and accident rates. So it is a very dangerous job to do. I think only fishing and construction come ahead of it. So a lot of work has had to go into reducing accidents that our workforce have. I talked to you briefly about the bin kidnapping, and that is where we get all of our data from. So all of our campaigns are data driven, and we call these data gathering exercises a compositional analysis, and it's when all of the elements of the waste stream are put into a grid, and we see exactly what's in there. So this is how we look to treat waste. It's called the waste hierarchy. It's the old adage of reduce, reuse, recycle, which I'm sure you've all become aware of. After recycling, we have energy recovery, which covers our energy from waste facility, and then right at the bottom we have disposal, which is basically putting things into landfill, which is essentially a hole in the ground, a repository for future problems. So we, as I said, we run a lot of waste reduction and reuse campaigns in Suffolk. Food Savvy is the current campaign that we're running in Suffolk, and that is because around a third of the waste that we collect in people's bins is food waste, and roughly half of that is food that could have been consumed but just hasn't. So I think of the 15% of food, roughly half of that's still in its packaging, which is incredibly depressing, to be honest with you. We also support home composting. We have our subsidised home composting offer that you can access through the Suffolk Recycling website. Reuse shelters at the recycling centres, and we also support reusable nappies in Suffolk as well. The other campaign that we're running at the moment is about getting recycling right, and that is basically trying to improve the quality of the recycling that we collect in people's recycling bins. I don't know if you'll have seen in the news recently, but there was some a report about waste going to Turkey and being burnt, I believe. So the way that we make sure that Suffolk's waste is never in that position is by insisting that we collect really high quality material. So that means rejecting bins at the curbside, and also rejecting waste that's delivered to our materials recycling facility in Great Blakenham. Obviously, if it gets into our waste stream and we are collecting it, by the time it's being delivered to the recycling centre, it's then double handled, so it becomes very much more expensive to deal with for us, which is why we're keen to sort of reject bins at the curbside to make sure that all of our residents are getting best value for money out of their curbside collection, and making sure that they know what they should be putting in their recycling bin at home. So we sent a leaflet out to households across Suffolk, and then we have backed this up with lots of press articles, press advertising, and obviously the mainstay of any communications campaign these days, lots and lots of social media. And we've had great interaction and lots of shares and likes and questions around the campaign through our social media channels. We also run the Glass Recycling and Metal Matters campaign. This was to encourage people to put caps and lids on their jars when they recycle their glass at the local glass bank. Jar lids and screw top bottles are too small to be recycled in the rubbish bin, but they can be recovered as part of the glass recycling process. So it's sort of a very neat way of helping people to recycle a product that was previously getting lost in the system, but also kind of helps keep things a bit cleaner for you at home. So if you've got a jar like a Marmite jar, you don't have to rinse it out and get it clean. That can actually, they've got plastic lids, so that's not a good example, but the pickle jars and marmalade jars where they've got metal lids, it's fine. You don't have to clean those bottles and jars out. You can just stick the lid on and put them into the glass bank, and that doesn't cause any problems with that process. So this is a diagram of what happens at the recycling centre. So here the bag, unfortunately this is a little bit out of date because we don't actually have a bag splitter anymore, but material basically gets delivered and goes through into the first, it's all run by conveyor belts. So it goes into this first cabin here where large pieces of card and hard plastics and other non-recyclables such as black bags just get pulled straight out. The remaining material travels through to a trommel, which is a moving screen. It's kind of like a round cheese grater with another one on the inside, and as the two wheels turn in opposite directions and the materials move through the holes based on their size. So that helps to get some of the materials into the ballistic separator and some of the materials into the sorting cabin. The ballistic separator, just notice separator's not spelt quite right, I don't think, basically shakes the material on a gradient. So the flat things go up to the top and round things like bottles and cans roll down to the bottom. Once they're at the bottom, magnets pull the steel out, and then an eddy current, which is kind of like a reverse of a magnet, pulls out the aluminium or pushes out the aluminium. Plastics have a very technical approach now. So we have optical sorters, and they use infrared light to identify what kind of plastics they are, and they actually are able to split the different polymer types of plastic into different materials so that they're actually more recyclable. So it's easier for us to place on the market and say this this bale of plastic is pure HDPE, for example. That's the material that milk bottles are made out of. So if you are a plastics recycler and you only want to buy HDPE, and you know that the Suffolk MRF produces a high quality bale of HDPE, you'll want to buy it from us. So that's part of the reason why we've invested in that type of equipment. And then the paper and card go through this sorting cabin, which is where people are working and hand sorting, hand removing any material that shouldn't be in that material line. So this is where we see things like the nappies getting pulled out, and plastic bags and those kind of things that we really don't want to see in the recycling stream. Obviously at this point all of those materials are loose. They're then put one at a time, obviously, into the baler, and they're wired and crushed and made into industry sized bales, which are then sent on for reprocessing. So I've talked a little bit about quality. Even the baler wire, so the wire that goes around the bale to keep all of the material together, even that counts towards contamination of that bale. So it really is very important to us to make sure that we've removed as much contamination as we possibly can. So the facility that we've got is run by a company called Viridor. It's based in Great Blakenham, just outside of Ipswich. As I said, it's sorted by machines, magnets and people, and it is marketed across the world and used instead of virgin materials. We have a list on our website on suffolkrecycling.org, which actually shows where all of our materials are sent for recycling. So we are quite transparent about the fact that some of our materials are sent abroad. However, we make sure that the people that we're sending our material to are regulated and have all of the necessary processes in place to deal with the material that we send them. I also heard from Viridor that they actually make their reprocessors pay in advance for the material. So they're obviously going to, if they're paying for the material, they're very keen to get it and actually reprocess it in order for them to make their own income. So economically, we're dealing with people that we have 100% confidence in that they're going to be doing the right things with the material that we send to them. The next curbside collection that I would like to talk to you about is our garden waste collection service. As you will be aware, we introduced a charge to this service in 2016. Since then, we've got roughly around 30,000 customers who are paying for that service. When we introduced the charging, it actually reduced the amount of waste in the total waste system by 5,000 tonnes. Now, I'm not a carbon expert. This is the sort of outside my area of expertise, but collecting 5,000 tonnes of waste and taking it for processing obviously creates a huge amount of emissions. So by reducing that 5,000 tonnes straight out of the system, that's been a real environmental benefit. The compost is created locally. It's taken to an open windrow facility where it's just a natural process to compost and biodegrade the material. Now, because it's open, it means that we're not actually allowed to process any food waste there. That's part of the very strict legislation that we work under. So that site is not licensed to accept food waste, which is why we had to make that change to the collection. And then once the compost has finished, it's screened, all of the large pieces are taken out and sent back through the process again, leaving a very nice product which has 100, which is a publicly available standard to give consumer confidence in the material, and it's sold to local landowners, so farmers use it to improve soil structure. Parks use it as well for creating good grass and beds and that sort of thing. So our black bin service, all of our waste is going currently into Great Blakenham again for energy recovery. I just think it's worth noting some of the timescales in this. So it was first first decided that Suffolk wanted an energy from waste plant in 2006. It took 6 years to get approval for that, despite the fact that Suffolk had a site that they could use and that belonged to them. So once construction started, it went very smoothly and was fully operational by December 2014. It is an incredible facility. If you ever get the opportunity to have a look, I really recommend it. And there's a dedicated community liaison officer that can show you around. And I think they're starting to think about offering tours again soon. So happy to keep in contact with anyone that's interested in attending one of those. So basically, the energy from waste process works by taking the waste which is delivered. Some of the waste is delivered obviously by Ipswich and Baber Mid Suffolk. They are able to deliver in directly. We deliver to transfer stations, so we have a transfer station in Haverhill, and obviously we have the transfer station in Bury as well that we use. That's where we collect waste up, bulk it up and send it in the HGVs down the A14 over to Great Blakenham. That waste sort of gets mixed up by this huge grab arm and then fed into the furnace, where it's burnt at around 750 degrees. The heat from that heats a boiler, which then in turn turns a turbine, which is attached to a generator and creates electricity. The rest of the emissions from burning the waste go through air pollution control and emissions monitoring. As I said, waste is a hugely regulated industry. The emissions monitoring that sewers have to do and report is all available freely on their website. I think you can sort of see it changing in real time. So that the facility is big enough to accept nearly 270,000 tonnes per year. We do actually get some recycling out of it. So at this section here, we have the bottom ash coming out. It's the same as if you have a fire at home, an open fire, you have some ash at the bottom. This bottom ash is actually used is recycled on site and is used as an aggregate for building, and there's also a magnet that passes over the ash as it's taken out of the plant, and that recovers some of the metals out of it as well. I think if it was allowed to be counted towards our recycling rate, it would add about 6% to our recycling rate, how much metal that we take out. But obviously, as it's been through a disposal treatment, it's not counted as recycling. The electricity that's generated is enough for 30,000 homes, which is a town the size of Lowestoft, and it saves a boatload of money versus landfill, which was the government's intention. They've set very high tax on sending waste to landfill. I think it's around costs around £120 per tonne to put waste into landfill now, and I think about £90 of that is actually landfill tax. It may even be more than that now. I'm a bit out of the loop on how much landfill tax is, since we don't send any waste to landfill. It also generates a lot less greenhouse gases, and that's because, as I was saying, a landfill is just a repository of problems for the future. As stuff starts to biodegrade in there, it's doing it in the absence of oxygen, because we've put a lid over the top. So the anaerobic actions of bacteria in the landfill site create methane. Modern, well-managed landfill sites are quite good at drawing that methane out and using the gas as a biogas that's injected into the gas grid. But as landfills get older, that gas supply is less easily accessible, which is when you end up with flares on landfill sites where the gas is sort of gathered to a central point and then burnt off, so that it doesn't catch fire inside the landfill site, because they are very tricky things to deal with, an underground fire. I shan't spend too much time talking about our street scene services, but West Suffolk Council are responsible for litter picking and street cleanliness. We have a hugely successful campaign, Love Where You Live, and I think I need to update this slide, because I think we have about 1,500 regular volunteers. Over lockdown, we litter picking became a really popular activity for people to do, and we were able to support people with equipment, which has been fantastic. And I know Haverhill has got an absolutely brilliant contingent of volunteers that are helping, and I know Amon's going to talk about that a bit later in the week, so I shan't steal his thunder. So the future of waste and recycling. At the moment, we are dealing with a set of incredibly wide-ranging consultations from government. We're talking about extended producer responsibility, which means if you bring a product to market, if you import it, if you sell it, you have a responsibility to pay towards its recycling and disposal. We're also looking at deposit return schemes, which is almost an extension of the extended producer responsibility, but very much focused on beverage containers. And that is hoping to reduce littering, but we'll see how that turns out. And lastly, consistency in household waste collections. And that doesn't just sit with household waste, it's also looking at business waste collections that local authorities deliver, and looking to increase the number of materials that are included in household waste collections. And it includes introducing weekly food waste collections, which really leads me into investment in recycling facilities in the UK. as I mentioned earlier, it took 6 years from looking at or agreeing a proposed site to getting permission to build the site in Suffolk. And that was a pretty smooth process. I think Suffolk County Council received possibly 40 objections to their planning application, which in context of a large scale piece of infrastructure is virtually nothing. Building, securing sites, securing planning permissions, securing operational licenses from the Environment Agency is a very time intense process, and that's if everything goes smoothly, and nobody wants waste sites near them. Even on a very small scale, I've been trying to get a bottle bank put in, and that has proven to be very difficult. We've had to remove the bottle bank from 2 sites because of complaints from nearby residents. So that's something that I'd definitely like to talk to the people on the call this evening is, where can I put some bottle banks? So if you're talking about creating food recycling, that is probably top of the list of people's fears of having near them. We're going to need transfer facilities, we're going to need more lorries, we're going to need more containers, and at the moment we have a shortage of containers, and that's without everybody all around the country rushing to introduce new collection facilities. So it's very easy to say introduce food collections, but we need a facility to process that food. We need a new fleet of vehicles to collect that food. All of our customers are going to need at least 2 receptacles in their home to collect the food in and present it at the curbside. Communications will be really key, and something that will have to be maintained, and within the current structure of our team, we simply don't have, I don't think, the capacity to roll something like that out. So actually coming up with these ideas and saying, we'll pay for it, from central government have said that there'll be funding available. There are barriers that money can't fix. So it's going to be very, very interesting the next few years on how these consultations are received by government and what they come and tell us we need to do. I mentioned about the media reports about waste going into Turkey, and the perception of people's what they think happens to their recycling. This is such a hard thing for us to break because all we ever get is negative media attention, and I think that is true. Well, I think a lot of media attention is on negative things, so they like to sensationalize things because that's what gives an easy hook for people to go and read. But I don't think we get any recognition of the fact that we're sending millions of tons that are recycled and are of good enough quality to be remade into new products. And I think at the top of this slide, I'm talking about this circular economy and social value. And I think waste and resource management are right in there. The circular economy model is making sure that materials that are put on the market are easily and readily recyclable into a new material that can be sent back onto the market. And it sounds so simple, but actually putting that into practice is very, very difficult. And social value, what improvements are you making to the world by your job? And I like to think that we are having a positive impact on the world with what we're doing, and it's gives lots of opportunities for people to do stuff for themselves, to get involved with their community, and to have a positive impact on all of those aspects. So I'm lucky because I'm part of an industry that I feel very passionately about, and it's something that I enjoy most of the time. So that's my final slide. So yeah, that was me talking rubbish for half an hour. So yeah, happy to take questions. Whoa, here we go. I haven't seen the questions coming in on the chat.
Colin, I think you're on
muted, Colin.
Sorry, I might be went off again. Sorry. Yeah, I was going to say the large card question was me. You had a diagram that a schematic of the recycling plant.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that non-recyclables and hard plastic, etc., are removed from the process straight away. And there was an arrow showing large cardboard.
Yeah, so I'll show you that. I'll put that slide back up so everyone can see what we're looking at. So is that showing up? Yeah. So this bit here, so the non-recyclables is just that arrow. So the large card is recycled. It's just that if that went into the trommel, for example, it would block all of the holes. So the other materials wouldn't be able to pass through the holes in the trommel. So it's removed right at the start of the process, so it doesn't get in the way of any of the other parts of the process that the material then goes through. So this bit here is basically two people with the belt going in front of them, and they're just pulling off these larger items to stop them from fouling up the rest of the process. So things like plastic bags, very difficult for them to pull out. They get sort of weighed down by other materials, so they're not necessarily visible. But when they go into the trommel, they stick to the sides and block the holes, so the materials can't pass through it. So that type of material has a potentially unexpected impact on the process. They also get bits of plastic bag get trapped in the moving parts of the machinery and can cause the plant to break down, and for them to have to sort of stop what they're doing in order to sort of clear the blockages and that sort of thing.
Okay, great, thank you. Did you want to tackle some of those other questions, Kate?
Yeah, let's have a look. What have we got? Any plans to capture carbon from flue gases in the waste to energy process? So I know there is. I know Suez work with a company who do carbon capture. I couldn't tell you if they're using that in Suffolk, but that's certainly a question I'm happy to take away and get an answer for you. So carbon capture from flue gases. So I'm sorry, I don't have an answer to that, but it's certainly one I can find out for you. And any plans for curbside glass collections? We knew it was going to be coming up this evening. So that's part of the consistency consultation that I was talking about just now. So essentially, government are telling us that we need to collect a set stream of materials at the curbside. We're not allowed to combine anything with paper. You're allowed to combine plastic and glass, or metal and plastic, but not metal, plastic and glass. So it's all getting very confusing, because you can then have an exemption if you carry out what's known as a TEEP analysis, which is technically, environmentally and economically practicable. So if you can meet those things, you can then get around what they're suggesting. So it's getting very complex, but basically they're telling us that we will need to collect glass, and they're going to pay for us to have the infrastructure to do that. So we will see. Okay, let's have a look. Heat process is now fed into the tomato farm. 25 years after it started, it will belong to SCC. What a shame. It's right next door to a railway line, but we failed when they built the hub to put it next to a railway, which have made sustainability more relevant. That's why there were 3 planning meetings. There's a lot of angst about that. More energy from waste, plus diesel and other flammable materials. So the energy from waste plant is a little bit cheaper than £100 a tonne. So that's why it's so much cheaper than landfill, because we are avoiding from avoiding that charge. With regards to railway access, the energy from waste plant doesn't have access to the railway, so the hub, having the hub next to the railway wouldn't have made any difference, because we wouldn't have been able to deliver by railway.
Okay, I beg to differ, Kay. It's right next door to a railway siding on the main Bury to Ipswich line.
But there isn't a sorry. What I'm saying is that the energy from waste facility doesn't have access to the train line. So the train line might run past it, but it doesn't have access to it.
But it could have done. It could have done with a bit more planning from the Suffolk partnership. What I'm saying is, it's the sustainability of the whole process. And as I said this last week, we're driving 50 miles from Haverhill, a lot of not manual handling, but a lot of rehandling of recycled goods and black bin waste for that matter is going over there. You know, it's a 50 mile minimum each way, 100-mile round trip. You know, and I know what you said last week about the thing, but I've had these arguments. I've been on the brown bin waste. I've been on Suffolk County Council scrutiny doing this. I was even on the planning committee that decided the operational hub. And I've been to the Great Blakenham site, walked around it, climbed up and down ladders, around the boilers, around the turbines and all that sort of stuff. And that's why I mentioned the £100 a tonne came from Suffolk County Council because of the cost of the diesel and everything they have to add to fuel it. Now, I'm not saying it's not a great site. You're dead right. I mean, there's probably only about 4 people seem to work there. You know, because it's all automated. I've got a load of pictures and video from when I went there. So it's a great site. But I think from the site I had problems with was the one next door, the Viridor one. Because when we went there, it was in fact, I would have closed it down straight away, personally.
Yeah,
it
I think I was leading that tour actually, and Viridor really let us down that day.
Yeah, you remember that day? Yes. So
I think it's had about £17 million worth of investment.
I was going to say, so it's worthwhile having another trip sometime, perhaps.
Yeah, a different site. Unfortunately, part of that investment has been to put a lot more equipment in there, which means it's not quite as accessible as it used to be. So we're working on getting the education room kind of up and running there. We're still having weekly meetings with within operations to discuss the impacts of COVID and to make sure that we're covering all of those risks. So I think those meetings are probably coming to an end now. and so I'm hoping that sorry, I'm a bit distracted by the messages, but I'm hoping that as things start to be a bit less difficult to work in, we'll be able to get people looking around the site. And I'm also hoping that we'll be able to get a lot more online content, so that it is easier for people to have a look at the facility without having to trek all the way over to Blakenham.
Before we go on to anything else, I was just going to say that in terms of Haverhill, there's a lot of lack of knowledge that everyone thinks that their black bin goes into landfill. There's a lot of people just don't understand that in Suffolk we haven't had that since, as you said, 2012, whatever it was. And the other one, just to add in, it was about the earlier question about the glass. On Facebook locally, that's probably the one biggest thing that comes up all the time is, why does West Suffolk and the Suffolk Waste Partnership not do what other councils do around the country, pick up glass from the curbside and get rid of those ugly things that we have in our car parks?
Yeah, well, I would counter that with we don't have problems with materials getting set on fire in Turkey, because we collect really high quality material that isn't contaminated and has really high value to people. So as soon as you put glass in a curbside collection, it gets smashed into pieces that are really difficult for recycling into anything good. It usually gets recycled into aggregate, which isn't circular. So the material we collect in bottle banks gets recycled into glass bottles and jars again, sometimes as quickly as within 30 days. So that material quality is really high. So that separate collection really works. We get about 70% of the material of glass that's in the waste stream through our bottle banks. So it's a high performing scheme, as well as being a high quality scheme. Paper and plastics get very badly damaged by being smashed up with glass. The quality is not there, especially with fibre. So with paper, a single shard of glass can ruin an entire ream of recycled paper. So if that happens, you're not going to want to buy paper from Suffolk, because you know that if you have that problem, it's bad for you, for your operations. So our material has got a really good reputation because it's high quality. We only sell to reputable off-takers. And we have access to those reputable off-takers. We're one of the only people that are actually exporting to China at the moment. And China's quality requirements are incredibly stringent. Incredibly stringent. So we've got a really good reputation for our recycling.
Okay, so I think it would be useful, as we're talking about kind of bottle banks, etc., is to shift the conversation on to community action, which is what the Sustainable Haverhill is all about. And you're looking at the whole question of getting more bottle banks in town, but what other things? I mean, there's obviously the Keep Haverhill Recycling Group that you've been doing some support with. So I was just wondering if we can shift the focus now onto what people can do differently as far as recycling, and what we can do to help more people recycle better.
Yeah. So as I mentioned about our Food Savvy campaign. So food waste, if food waste was a country in terms of its greenhouse gas emissions, it would be the third biggest country in the world. So behind America and China comes food waste in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. So the one thing that everybody can do is to reduce the amount of food that they're putting in their black bins. And we actually are trying to recruit a street through to take part in a competition versus Norfolk streets. So we've got a nice bit of like cross-border derby going on, to be the street that's saved. and we're going to provide that community with lots of goodies to help them reduce food waste. And we're hoping to we're in talks with a TV production company as well to help get this into a TV show. So I'll post some links to the street that's saved in the chat if I get a chance to look them up. But yeah, if there's anybody out here tonight that would be interested in taking part in that, it would be brilliant to have some West Suffolk representation as part of that project. But yeah, our Food Savvy website is full of ideas on how to reduce food waste. And you know, speaking as individuals, that's the biggest impact we can have, is to do everything we can to reduce food waste. And I know I'm probably talking to a lot of people that are quite committed to waste reduction. So I usually get comments, well, I never throw any food waste out. But it's getting that message across to people that perhaps don't recognise that is happening in their household. And you know, telling people they can freeze cheese always surprises people. And you know, that's just one tip that can make a difference. In terms of recycling, yes, you mentioned the TerraCycle scheme that that I think Nick's actually on the call tonight. I think he's set it up. So that scheme is set up to capture some of the what I call complex packaging. So things like crisp packets. Several different types of material all bonded together in a really lightweight format, which makes them really hard for us to collect as part of a curbside collection, and even more difficult to recycle because you have so many different constituent materials. So TerraCycle have set up schemes in order to capture these materials in a source segregated way, which makes them very pure waste stream and much easier to capture for recycling. And Nick very kindly reached out to West Suffolk Council, and we're supporting that with some carton collection points, as well as some small domestic appliance collections as well. So yeah, so we've worked as part of the community to help collect some materials that we're not able to collect at the curbside.
Great, thank you for that. I saw Councillor Hanlon, you had your hand up rather, just for a moment.
It's just I think shops have got a lot of responsibility as far as food waste is concerned. Perhaps years ago they used to do it, but you know, you take cauliflower, they leave the leaves on, and I think my mother used to cut the leaves off and use them as green vegetables, but I don't think anyone does that nowadays. You know, and that all goes, and there's quite a lot of that goes into the black bin.
It looks prettier though, doesn't it? A cauliflower, you know, sort of cuddled up with its leaves. It's more consumer friendly, isn't it?
Yeah, but that doesn't happen with the green. Oh dear, what's that called? The one that's green that doesn't have any leaves, that looks
broccoli.
Silver. Broccoli, that's it. That doesn't happen with broccoli, does it? You know, it's because they have got leaves on, believe it or not as big as cauliflower, but as I say, it's just I think it personally, it's just a waste, because they do, supermarkets now do packets of broccoli all cut up in packets, you know. So there is a different way of doing it, and I think that's a lot of fresh vegetables. Really, there's a lot of waste on fresh vegetables as well. Luckily, the supermarkets are not giving out bags now for vegetables, which is a good thing. But as I said, cauliflower, that's different because they put them in plastic bags. But As I say, I think shops have got a lot to answer for as far as food is concerned as well.
Yeah, and a lot of work has been done by retailers to help cut consumer waste, but also to reduce kind of their system waste as well. So one of the things that gets brought up frequently is the wrap around cucumbers, and that actually extends the life of a cucumber by 2 weeks. So that small piece of cellophane actually is potentially saving the cucumber from being thrown away 2 weeks by 2 weeks. So it does. Packaging does play its part in reducing waste. So it can't all. It's not all there just for making things look nice. You know, there is. I think we did go through a good number of years where waste, you know, packaging was just becoming increasingly wasteful, and I think we have seen retailers reduce some of that down, and things like there are now voluntary agreements that the supermarkets actually don't do the 2-for-1 offers on fresh food anymore, or if they do, it's like a pick and mix. So you can have, you know, instead of having 2 bags of apples, you can have a bag of apples and a bag of oranges, and that's to help reduce waste, because why would you go into the supermarket and buy 1 bag of apples and reject the free apples? It's just not human nature to reject something that's free. So
Kate, Saffron's got a question, and then perhaps we can ask Nick, as he's here, to talk about the Haverhill recycling, keep Haverhill recycling.
Yeah, definitely.
Saffron.
I just wanted to sort of add to your point there about sort of what people can do. I suppose planning your meals is one good thing to reduce waste that people in the community can do. And also, you know, it's been discussed here already, supermarkets are starting to sort of get on board with sort of reducing waste. I know Waitrose has started the Unpacked scheme in certain places, which hopefully will take off a bit more as we sort of come out of COVID. Yeah, there's loads of things sort of people can do to reduce waste. And I suppose it sort of interlinks quite well with the sustainable living, which obviously we're going to be touching on Thursday. But yeah, I just wanted to sort of add in there. There's lots people can do, just sort of in their regular weekly shop.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like you said, meal planning is a brilliant way of reducing food, and also conversely, having a night where you haven't planned for anything, so you can use up your leftovers, or you can treat yourself to a takeaway or a meal out. You know, because it does happen. Your meal plans will change, so having a bit of flexibility in your weekly plan then sort of allows for that. But yeah, having a use up day, I think, is one of the things that I've really got into recently, and it sort of gives you a bit of a challenge, an opportunity to be a bit creative, and yeah, it's strange the things that I get excited about.
Thanks, Kate. Did we want to bring Nick in now? Obviously, Nick has founded the Keep Haverhill Recycling Group, and obviously this is about community action. So it may be also, Nick, to include, you know, what help does your group need? Does it need more members, etc.?
Hi, yeah. We say it's a group. It all started off with one blister pack, really. I had some medicine and I saw a blister pack and I didn't know what to do with it. And that same day, I saw that somebody shared about the TerraCycle scheme. So I put something out onto Facebook, and I had about 200 people come and say, "Yeah, we don't know what to do with these. Let's do something." So that's where that started, really. So even though at the moment we're focusing on the TerraCycle thing, the worrying thing is that Sanofi apparently have already got cold feet about this, and are trying to get out of it, the blister pack. So there's a change.org have got a petition going through at the moment to try and get all drug companies to do the same thing. But the next steps really for Keep Haverhill Recycling are to open up the recycling discussions. So we've got a page at the moment which is saying what we're doing, but the next step is to have a discussion page, a monitored discussion page where people can share tips, and we can get more education out there. In that short space of time that Keep Haverhill Recycling's started, we're already in contact with 5 schools. So 5 schools are on board, starting to, they're mainly looking at pens and markers and things like that. But they're discovered that most primary schools do have an eco group. And that's been a really, really positive thing to find. And there's a few people who came along on Saturday are already collecting from their street as well. So they're putting a collection box outside their house, which they're collecting particular things in. So there's real community action going on there. And the overriding thing that came out of, we had more than 180 people come to bring us their waste over the course of the last few days. And people were incredibly energized by it. They were smiling about bringing it, and they were really, really happy to do it. A bloke came the other day and he said, thank goodness. He says, I've been saving these for 2 years. And he bought 2 years worth of crisp packets that he'd been saving. The local police brought theirs along the other day. 2 people have bought stuff in from their offices as well. So it is about, to me, it's about having that public presence and making things easy for people to do. You talk about the food idea. One of the things that we're looking to maybe do is having a food day from Keep Haverhill Recycling, where we could ask people to bring down their food, the food that they have got left over, so that we can either demonstrate it or use it. Nearly finished here. We've also got.
I really love that idea, because we've got the community kitchen, which was funded by the Hubbub, which is the charity that we work with for Food Savvy. So there's that kitchen at the Leyston Centre. So that's definitely something we can have a think about, Nick. I'd love to do something like that.
So that was my next point. In my non-volunteering role, I'm the line manager of the Haverhill Community Kitchen. So that's one of the things that I've been talking with Sean, our coordinator up there. He's already started to make links with the local supermarkets about food waste. We've made links with the local allotment as well to have their food. And we're looking at how we might have soups and stocks days and things like that. So that is a discussion that I'm kind of having at work as well. So the community kitchen's got a big role to play. During lockdown, it's been difficult to be a community kitchen, but we have built loads of traction online and increased the numbers of people there who are following the kitchen and cooking along with the kitchen. So it's a good thing there. So there's a real good feeling for it, and it goes throughout the generations. I mean, I've talked about the primary schools who came along, but some of our favourite oldies, there was a 92-year-old lady bought her blister packs down the other day, and the majority of these people have started to engage with the Facebook page that we've got. A few don't and hear from their neighbours, but we've got more than 650 people following that in less than 2 months. So I think we can really start to use Keep Haverhill Recycling to while we've got this focus on the TerraCycle scheme, the next part of it is to widen the conversation. There is confusion out there. People are confused. They used to take Tetra Paks, but they don't anymore. We had people come to us from over the border in Cambridgeshire and talk about their waste collection as well. But I gather there is some sort of standardisation looking to come over a period of time. But I think that Keep Haverhill Recycling's got a real life in it to take from a really, you know, one medicine blister pack and move really quickly to empower people.
Nick, in terms of the present, so you've had a few events where you've been out on the high street or on the market square, enabling people to collect. How sustainable is that? I mean, do you have enough volunteers that means that a rota can be created so that it doesn't always have to be the same people? Or how does it work? How do you envisage it working?
I've got Jackie on the call tonight, who's been out with me for 2 days, and so far we've had 4 other people as part of it, and there's offers from another 2. So it's a relatively small group at the moment. So as we're looking at, we call it a once a month or twice a month collection, at the moment there's enough people to kind of cover that. And really what I'm starting to do is make sure that everyone gets a turn on one of those days so they can see what that day is like. When Amon was there, we had 25 people in the first hour on Friday. And that's quite a lot of people, because everybody gets a bit of conversation with what they're doing as well. So there are a small group of people already who are up for being volunteers on the stall. So hopefully we'll be okay in the short term, and hopefully that will grow.
Okay, cool. Did anybody else on the call want to ask Nick any questions on that? Oh, there's Pat.
Yeah,
So
yes, just going back to really, I think it was mentioned about this is not for Nick, this is for Kate. I think you mentioned about, you know, the recycling, getting people to put the proper stuff in the proper bins for, you know, household collection. Obviously, I think there's got to be more, because people are still using black bags, putting in their blue bins, which is silly. You know, you just got to put, if you put it in a black bag, just tip the black bag stuff into the blue bin and then put the black bag in the black bin. It's easy as that. I just can't understand why people don't do it. But there was, you know, when these bins first come out, there was little slots for sort of chips that was going to go into them, wasn't there? And that got dropped. I think it was to recognise a particular house on what particular bin that they was doing.
It was the RFID tags, wasn't it?
Yeah. You know, and obviously, you know, I don't want everyone to sort of get told off or back. Well, I just want people to know that what they're doing is really damaging the earth, you know. So there needs to be something either stuck on the bin, or, you know, from, I don't know if the waste disposal men got time to do that, but if they see a bin full of black bags, for instance, or stuff that is not, you know, just is not, because it should be in the black bin, which it can contaminate, and I think it can ruin a whole bin, a whole lorry load. So I'm just wondering if there's a way that we can get around this, really, and I just wonder if Kate has got any idea.
Yeah, well, we're putting a lot of effort into sort of community outreach. Obviously, being here this evening, and Mon is working his socks off in Haverhill, making contact with people and kind of being visible both to our collection crews and to members of the members of the public, so that we do have that kind of consistent approach. I think we've got some work to do with our collection crews to make them feel like they're properly supported if they do reject someone's bin, because that can be a really confrontational experience for them. And also we've got some kind of existing issues, places like I think it's the Chalkstone estate, where bins aren't necessarily close to the house that you'd expect it to belong to, and we have collection points where we have sort of 20 bins in one place, and it's quite hard for them to know, number one, who that bin belongs to, so they can't tell the office I've rejected this bin, and two, if they do reject a bin, at the end of the day it's a bit of a scramble to see who can get the bin that hasn't make sure they don't get the bin that wasn't emptied back to their house. So those kind of setups are quite difficult things for us to get around, and that's why we're looking at things we can do within the community to improve the waste that people put out. But that joy that Nick was describing, people bringing him their waste and being so happy that it can be recycled, that's the feeling I want people to have when they put their blue bin out, is that look at all of this stuff that I'm diverting from being sent to energy from waste. Like, this is, it needs to be looked at, not and this is the trouble, is we're picking it up in a bin, we're picking it up in the lorry with the same lorry that people's rubbish are picked up in. I don't think people look at their recycling as a resource that is going towards making the world a more sustainable place. They're looking at it as a way of getting rid of stuff they don't want anymore from their house. And I think there's a quite a big cultural change that's needed throughout all of our society, that actually recycling needs to be high quality to make sure that it is capable of being recycled, and not, you're not just throwing nappies in it or chucking it all in a black bag and hoping it will get sorted out, or chucking any old bit of plastic in there because you think it might be recycled but you're not sure, so you'll let someone else sort it out for you. It's about taking responsibility and taking responsibility of what comes in your house and how it goes out as well.
Right, thank you for that.
Recycling heroes. Oh, Amon's coming up with recycling heroes. Yeah, I like the idea of recycling heroes. We can let you have stickers if you're feeling heroic.
Yeah, I think that's quite a big ask for, if it's a big ask for paid staff, it's a very big ask for volunteers, certainly. I was going to mention fly tipping. I noticed that John's just put a message on fly tipping. I have had discussions with family and communities team, and you mentioned Love Where You Live, about trying to tackle some of the fly tipping around town in terms of providing a skip that needs to be manned. It needs people next to it to make sure people don't chuck stuff in that they shouldn't chuck in. But also, I wondered whether there's any deals ever been done with some of the old rag and bone man, I guess, but in terms of the people who pick up old fridges and freezers, whether or not there's a deal to be had, so that instead of people putting stuff out on the street, effectively fly tipping in the hope that somehow a dust cart is going to take a fridge freezer away, but actually have a session where people can put that sort of thing out and on a particular day, because we're sending a scrap metal merchant round to pick it all up. I don't know whether there's examples of that elsewhere.
Ooh, the old scrap metal merchants tend not to be licensed, so we wouldn't be able to.
We have a very good one in Haverhill that is waste. He's got a waste operator's license, and he goes round regularly, probably once a month, around every street in the town.
Right.
I'm trying to think of his name, but he does go round, and you can phone him up as well, and he'll come round and pick it up.
I actually used him last week.
Yeah, what's his name? I can't remember his name, Pat.
He came round with his bell.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
No idea his name.
Yeah,
I gave him an old 40-inch television and a laptop. So and he was well pleased with that.
Yeah, yeah.
And he took about 7 items in my street, and it's not a very big street.
What we have problems with is we tend to have problems with road landlords clearing out HMOs and just chucking it on the street or on Haverhill land invariably. And then obviously Haverhill get their contractors, and I'm trying to remember who they are, but whoever they are, I'm sure Amon will know. But equally, we have our own Darren or whoever down at the depot will go out and clear all that rubbish up at the cost of the taxpayers, of course. But the fly tipping side of things, of course, has been aggravated by the main site only allowing waste to be dumped once a week. And that is a major problem because the place is empty most of the time now.
I think that is coming to a point where it will.
I know, but they should have done it 6 months ago. And the problem is a lot of the recycling things are in that area as well. So if you have
that is underway, John. So I think that
I know, but I'm just saying that is a cause of a lot of the problems we've got in our town. I go around this town regularly, Colin. I know you're not here that often, but I go around here regularly, and there's stuff by the wayside, and you think that is just.
That's only been for the last year, hasn't it? And
that's what I mean. No, that's right. During this.
With fly tipping, so I don't think it's fair to blame it just on the fact that the recycling centres have been restricted, because it's been a problem in Haverhill for a great number of years.
No, this last year it's probably gone up 500% in this last year.
We are aware that it's gone bad. I just wonder, because obviously time is marching on, and we're really after ideas from the community for community action. In terms of what people might have in mind that they think they could do.
Yeah, I saw a message through from Alan about creating demand for the local authorities to do things better. And by all means, please do take a look at the consistency consultation. It's a public consultation. So if you want to see change, take that opportunity to respond to the consultation and tell government what you want to see. If it needs funding, then we need people to demand that funding is given to us. So that's a really powerful opportunity for people to have a say on how the service is developed over the next few years. Saffron, you've got your hand up very patiently.
Thank you. We've just been discussing in the chat sort of how we could maybe involve school children. I know Nikki mentioned that some of the primary schools are already sort of on board with Keep Haverhill Recycling, and that could be a really great resource to get kids talking about it. Kids tend to be naturally really enthusiastic about things, so it might be really great to get the primary schools involved. Maybe, I suppose, Nikki, you involved with art in Haverhill? So just thinking sort of maybe if we sort of involve children to do like a competition to create like a recycling poster or something, that could really sort of get the kids engaged and excited about recycling, and then that might pass on to sort of maybe changing their parents' habits, maybe putting stuff in the right bins, etc.
We do actually have an annual school competition where children create on a theme of recycling, and we'll give them something to make as part of an exhibition that we hold. And obviously last year it didn't happen, but I'm really hopeful that it will go ahead this year. So anyone that's got links to schools that wants to promote that, it will be advertised through the Suffolk Recycling Facebook page and through the website as well. So we actually have an e-zine that you can sign up for through the Suffolk Recycling website. So yeah, it'd be great to if you want to sign up to that, you're at the forefront then of all the information that comes out of the council about recycling.
I suppose that sort of thing could be shared sort of around on the Facebook groups as well, sort of for people that maybe don't sort of sign up to those things, just to get more people involved.
One of the things that I feel is that posters are very kind of one-off things, whereas really what I feel that we're looking at is that it's got to be part of how the school is. It's got to go in right at a deeper level with schools. And it's almost like offering then something, even if it's just a Haverhill green charter mark or something of that thing. So schools love to have things, awards that they can have, and developing Haverhill's own sustainable awards or something like that businesses can take part in, schools can take part in. But it really is about, schools work to, right through from governors, getting hold of the head teachers. Those enthusiastic teachers that I've come across, a lady called Liz who came out and helped the other day, she is just over the moon that something like this is happening, and she's willing to really take that forward, hopefully. And as I say, the schools that have got kind of eco leaders in there, I think we do need to go down at the bottom so that kids are really, really learning about it as part of their education process, and schools are following through with it as well, so that they do make sure that every pen they use gets recycled, every piece of paper goes in the correct bin, so that they've got some kind of working to a really, really high standard right from that. And that's where I think the kids will get that education from.
The eco committees, quite often the work, and there's a schools green award already. That's a national thing that you can get bronze, silver and gold depending on how busy your eco committees are. So certainly keep Haverhill Recycling and other initiatives that might be thought of are useful to schools, because they make it easier for their committees to move up the scale, if you like, to be able to qualify for a higher award. And I know that schools are very keen, as you say, on getting a few more logos on their headed paper to show what they've been up to.
But let's develop our own charter that can all the strands that you've got going at the moment. Have their own charter that schools can go into. If they can plant trees, if they can hit certain targets on recycling, if they can look at their own sustainability, then Haverhill can have its own charter mark for its own schools. And if we are going to get down to that level of what is Haverhill, which is, so much of what I'm about and I've always been about, it's about Haverhill. So we should be going it a little bit alone, in my opinion, and making it proud that, this school has got the Haverhill mark. We've hit that standard.
Thank you for that. I'm aware John's got his hand up, but I'm also aware that some of the other people on the call haven't said anything. Some of them have commented in the chat box, but do feel free to chip in. This is a community meeting. It's not a council meeting. So if anyone wants to say anything, please do. John.
Well, one of the things I brought up at the Energy and Sustainable meeting of the council was the fact, and it wasn't in there originally, is actually making sure that business are involved. And Nick sort of mentioned it as well, but I'm just wondering how we can encourage those businesses that don't bother recycling anything and just chuck it in the bin, whether it's a council bin or whether it's Biffers or Viola's or one of those other companies, to ensure that they do recycle, because there's no real pressure on them to do so, other than the fact they have to pay, X amount of money for bins to be taken away. But it's very easy for them just to chuck anything in those bins. And although West Suffolk and Waste Partnership don't landfill, some of these others do that are not West Suffolk companies.
So there is actually legislation in place which prevents businesses from throwing anything directly into landfill. So if they're putting all of their waste into one bin, then they have to tell that their contractor that's taking their residual bin away that they've actually taken the recyclables out, or the contractor has to run that material through a process that removes the recycling before it is sent for disposal. So there is some sort of legislation around putting, you know, it got so silly that I had an argument with the Environment Agency about it's called the pre-treatment regulations, and they were telling me that I had to pre-treat litter bin waste before it got sent for disposal, and it's I know. You do get stuck in these sort of regulatory.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to educate is getting businesses to recycle like any household would do.
Yeah.
You know, so if they have got a bit of cardboard, let's put it in a cardboard waste or, you know, a recyclable waste canister. I mean, my own business, up until relatively recently, only had one bin and everything went in it. Now we have two. We have a recyclable one because we asked for it. It wasn't forced on us, and that's only because we decided to move from a private contractor to West Suffolk, and we were offered that.
Very good move.
Yeah,
very good.
No, it's a good move. Yeah, no, it was. Yeah, I would agree totally. But there's a lot of businesses I see around. They've only actually got one bin.
So obviously, businesses are the same as households, and they're restricted on how many containers they can fit on the premises. But when we sign up our businesses, we'd always encourage them to take the recycling service as well as the residual waste service. And the recycling service is cheaper than our residual waste service. So there's you know, an economic benefit to the business as well as the environmental and, you know, corporate social responsibility impact as well. So we always encourage our business customers to sign up for recycling.
Okay, but we need to educate those, because I don't know whether they lose out on the general leaflet, which I know Alan said he didn't receive, but you know, the leaflet that sits under someone's blue bin every year or so, whenever it is. Do we do the same thing with businesses somehow? I don't know, to try and educate them.
Customers, yeah, we contact our trade customers, and we're perhaps even more rigorous with them about their recyclables than we are with householders, because they're a bit easier for us to get in contact with. So yeah, our trade customers, you know, our West Suffolk Council's trade customers, we're in contact with. As a council, we're not. We don't have the funding, we don't have the statutory authority to go out to businesses and enforce.
Sorry, Kate, but you could do via things like business rate bills and things like that, which do go out from a council-controlled company. You know, ARP. I'm not saying ARP are the best people in the world, but I'm just saying, you know, it could be done like that. Yeah,
but who's paying for it? Is that down to our residents, because they're the ones that pay ARP?
We get a part of the business rate come back to us. A small part, mind you. Yeah, no, it's just something that came up with business recycling, to try and encourage them to recycle. Because I put in the comments about, you know, Amnon and others have put those bins in the town centre. But what we've got is I'm getting actually traders on the market and the shops saying they're now being filled up with people like Costa Coffee with all their recyclable cups. And I don't know how we educate those as well. Sorry, Saffron, I interrupted you.
I was just going to say that we're hoping to have sort of a separate discussion for businesses specifically, and talking about sort of the different certifications that they can get. Through the Carbon Charter and Be Anglia. Yeah, I just thought I'd mention that. It's something obviously that's obviously important to look at as well as community action.
Thank you for that, Saffron. Yeah, we're just waiting for a date from Groundworks East, I think, to be able to do that. So we're coming up to 9 o'clock, Kate. So I want to try and bring the last few strands of this together. So certainly in terms of kind of action for people on the committee, on this call, who are, I think some of you already involved in organisations like Keep Haverhill Recycling, or at least community action like that, you know, people can continue to bring that down. It does seem like there's a bit of a publicity thing that we need to think about in terms of how we can promote and Kate has put a message out there that if people can think of locations for glass recycling, at the end of the day, it's not done at the curbside at the moment for whatever reason. It just simply isn't. And therefore, by far and away, the next best thing is to encourage people to do community recycling at bottle banks, and to a certain extent, the more the merrier, because the easier it is for people to get to their local bottle bank, the more likely they are to do it, rather than if it's a journey in its own right. Now, clearly, there are things at supermarkets in any case, but Kate, elsewhere in the county, bottle banks are really important community assets for their parish councils or community groups, etc. So that, say, if the Scouts had a bottle bank just inside their premises that people could access, then they would actually generate a great deal of income. At one point, I know Baber does that a lot, but at one point West Suffolk had a pot of money available that from the landfill tax receipts, that meant that community groups that hosted bottle banks could effectively create a income stream from that. Is that still the case?
Yeah, it's not a great deal of income, unfortunately, but yes, we do have recycling credits available for community groups that set up additional recycling facilities and show that they're having an impact. So yeah, we're able to support community groups and village halls and such like that give over some of their facility for recycling. So yeah, please do get in touch.
So if anyone on the call has links with community groups, they think, well, actually, that could well be, a few £100 extra coming in. And I think, my local parish, I think it's about £1,200 a year that the bottle and paper banks gain for the parish as a result. So it's certainly well worthwhile. I don't know if there's any other takeaways that you feel that people should bear in mind, Kate, before we end the call.
Eat your broccoli stalks. Encourage your neighbours to recycle. If everybody just tries to recycle one more thing than they would normally, so bottles out of the bathroom, plastic bottles out of the bathroom, that sort of thing, then all of those little actions build up into a huge impact. So thank you to everybody that has been using the curbside scheme for so long and made it such a huge success. And I'm happy to put my email address up if anybody has got anything that they'd like to ask me after the call. Then please do get in touch.
Sorry, Colin, can I just add one more thing? Obviously, community action, at some point, the group that we're starting to do may need a bit of money. I had to spend £5.99 the other day, the first money that Keep Haverhill Recycling has spent on black plastic sacks, but we promote ourselves purely through a Facebook page at the moment. But for us to grow any more, we don't want to create loads of leaflets because they just become rubbish. But we do want to have some other kind of way of showing that we're here. And my final bit is really, we called it Keep Haverhill Recycling to fit in with Keep Haverhill Tidy, because Keep has got an element of sustainability about it as well. So it could be that groups may be interested in coming within Sustainable Haver under the Keep Haverhill banner going forward, to show that they're all doing the same thing, having that word keep in it, which is not just staying still, it's keeping it doing. That's my bit.
Right, thanks, Nick, for that. That's very useful. Huge thanks again to Kate for doing the expert side of things today. It's been really, really fascinating to hear what's been going on. Thank you, Nick, for telling us more about what Keep Haverhill Recycling is doing, and thank you everybody for taking part. So this will be turned into a podcast, so if anybody else you talk to is interested, this will be available, so they'll be able to see Kate's presentation on that podcast. Thank you all very much for calling in this evening. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.